Shalom. This week we begin a new book in the Torah, Bemidbar, the fourth book of the Torah, known in English as Numbers. It gets its name in the English due to the fact that God commands Moses to take a census to number the Jewish people. In Hebrew we call this Bemidbar, which means in the wilderness. This book has many stories, many episodes, many events that occurred during those 40 years that our people wandered in the Sinai desert, between the time they left Egypt and the time they entered the Holy Land. Let's take a look at where this Sinai wilderness is geographically. This is the Sinai Peninsula, a triangular piece of real estate between Israel over here and Egypt. Of course, Israel is in the western part of Asia, and Egypt is in the northeast corner of Africa. Our people, for nearly 4 centuries, dwelled in the land of Goshen up here in the northeastern part of Egypt, and we crossed the Red Sea. Some think it was there, some people think it was further down here, and there are a number of possible routes that our people may have taken between Egypt and the land of Canaan. There's a northern route here leading up to Eretz Yisrael. And generally, though, traditionally, we believe that we took more of a southern route this way. Now, here's Mount Sinai, where we received the 10 Commandments. Notice to the west we have the Gulf of Suez, to the east the Gulf of Eilat, or some people call it the Gulf of Aqaba, and to the north we have the Mediterranean Sea. And this is how the book and the Sedra Bemidbar open. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe Bemidbar Sinai Ba'ohel Moed Be'achad lechodesh hasheni B'shana hashenit Leitzetam me'eretz Mitzrayim limor. On the first day of the second month, in the second year following the exodus from the land of Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, saying. Now, a question that often arises is this: why did we spend so much time in the desert, 40 years, to cross the Sinai Peninsula, which is not much more than a couple of hundred miles? Certainly that journey could have been accomplished within a few weeks at most. And yet our people spent 40 years in Midbar Sinai, in the Sinai wilderness. There are a lot of reasons given for this. The late Abba Ibn, the wonderful diplomat and historian of the Jewish people, said that our people were not ready, were not militarily ready to take on the Philistines, and they needed a generation in the desert to toughen up, to organize themselves in order to be able to be strong enough to encounter and to conquer the inhabitants of Canaan. An Israeli historian by the name of Nachman Ron analyzes that idea a little more deeply. He said that what occurred in the desert was a maturation, a national and a spiritual maturation of the people. It was in the Sinai desert that we developed our character as a people. We learned a certain faith in God. We learned to appreciate God and to approach God as a free people. We learned to be on one hand, self-reliant, and on the other hand, to have faith in God. And another thing we learned in the desert, and this is a lesson that peoples the world over who live in harsh terrain know very well, and that is we learn to cooperate and to look out for one another. Every Jew had to be responsible for every other Jew. Those elements, those lessons that we learned in the desert became a permanent feature of the Jewish character. Rabbi Akiva of the Talmud has a slightly different take. He said, it was difficult living in the desert. We certainly suffered in the desert. But it is when you suffer, it is when you learn to face challenges that you grow spiritually. There is a saying in the Talmud, Lefun Tsara Agra, according to the suffering and the trouble is the reward. And you grow not in a life of comfort, you grow in a life of struggle. Some of the rabbis of old said the Torah was given in the Sinai wilderness, not in the land of Israel, but in the Sinai wilderness. And we have this entire book named after the wilderness for this reason, that the Torah is not only the possession of the Jewish people. The Torah was given in basically what amounts to a no man's land, that the Torah is the heritage of all human beings, even though we Jews are the curators, the witnesses, so to speak, of the eternal truths of the Torah. Pinchas Peli, the late columnist for the Jerusalem Post, speaks of an internal wilderness that each of us has inside of her or his being. There is a wilderness that has to be tamed. What is the nature of that wilderness? It is egotism, it's selfishness, self-centeredness, it's greed. And the Torah is what tames that wilderness. That is the meaning of what the wilderness meant in our tradition. I have my own idea. I find that contemporary life, this highly technological world that we live in, this urban environment we dwell in, can be very complex. And there are times in our lives when we have to simplify. We have to simplify our lives to find out what is essential and what isn't essential. And certainly in the desert, you don't carry a lot of baggage with you. You find out what is absolutely fundamental to your life and what isn't, and you live your life accordingly. Well, I hope that you will read Bemidbar and that you will come up with your own interesting ideas and insights. Shabbat Shalom.